Welcome to This Week in Hastings Headline History, where we take a look back at what was making news in Hastings, Florida over a century ago. These stories are out of the pages of the Hastings Herald, which was published weekly in the early 1900s. I invite you to sit back and enjoy listening to what was making news in the July 18, 1919 edition. Signalmen of railroads submit demands to Director General and may call strike. The question of wages and the question of classification are among the subjects upon which the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen desires to reach a speedy agreement with the Railroad Administration. At present, the signalmen are rated as shop crafts, but they maintain their duties are more responsible than those of shop workmen, and they accordingly are asking separate classification with wages and working conditions adjusted accordingly. If an answer is not received before the convention adjourns, a strike vote is to be taken under the terms of the resolution. If a strike is called, it will mean the walkout of more than 14,000 men, according to Brotherhood officials. Hastings resident Inventor of New Crate eliminates trouble and saves time. On Wednesday of this week, Joe R. Ritter received through his attorneys from the Patent Office at Washington papers governing the self-fastening knockdown container which was invented by him some time ago. Mr. Ritter has demonstrated one of his sample crates to us, and we believe that it is about the last word in box, crate, or container construction. These containers are made complete by the mill or factory in any desired shape and materials, and owing to the peculiar construction, nest easily either flat or in circle in knockdown. A minimum is reached in the amount of lumber or other material required in construction of containers made after this method, and result in an attractive and most efficient package. One of the leading features that will appeal to the shipper and also to the receiver is that these containers are easily set together. Without the aid of nails, wire, forms, hammer, saw, or in fact anything except the container itself, it being so constructed that walls are identical, therefore interchangeable, and interlocking engagement is resultant when the walls are properly assembled. Tractor to be in Hastings. The latter part of this month, a carload of Fordson tractors will be unloaded in Hastings and will be disposed of by the St. John's Motor Company, the present operators of what was formerly the Hastings Auto and Supply Company. They acquired the business here principally to sell and give service on the tractor. This is one of the biggest single shipments of tractors ever received in the state. It marks the passing from the old style to power farming. One of the tractors has been sold to the county, and it is understood that some 3 or 4 have been spoken for by certain of the prominent farmers. An extensive demonstration will be given shortly after their arrival, the date of which will be announced in an early issue of this paper. Baseball with Palatka. Last Thursday, the Hastings boys motored over to Palatka with the intention to beat the Gem City, but for some unknown reason, the homeboys were defeated by the margin of a score. The fact that Hastings boys were not in shape to go on the diamond to play a team that had practiced was the cause of defeat. Palatka has beaten us 2 times this year because of the lack of practice on our part, but they had better look out when the umpire gives the play ball call next time, because we lost 2 games is no reason that we are going to take the little end of the score in all games. Let's wake up and get together and get in the game for business. We can and we will. The next game of Palatka will be played here, and everyone should come out and yell for the homeboys. Give them a cheer that will put pep and vim in them. From the editorial section. Teaching and other trades. That school teachers are underpaid is an old story grown tired from some constant repetition. But here are some fresh facts submitted by the National Education Association which gives the subject a new interest. Teaching salaries have actually been raised. They have risen in the past 3 years, from 1915 to 1918, from an average of $543 to $630 a year. But let no taxpayer plume himself on this fact. The increase meets but 1/7 of the current advance in living expenses, leaving the teacher far worse off than before. The most striking thing in the report is a comparison of the pay of teachers with other compensations. The poorest paid railroad employee, the day laboring section hand, gets twice as much as the average teacher. Skilled railroad men get 5 and 6 times as much. The wages of bakers, carpenters, and glaziers are double the average teacher's pay. Blacksmiths, mechanics, lathers, and wiremen are paid 2.5 times as much as the person who instructs the young idea in marksmanship, and plumbers and bricklayers and structural iron workers get 3 times as much. The ordinary shipyard workers paid $1,411 per annum as compared to the teacher's $630. Surely her work is no less important and difficult than his. She is shaping the material that goes into the making of that supreme product, the ship of state. She has spent years in preparation for her profession, many more than a lawyer and nearly as much as a doctor. The answer to the question as to why there is a shortage of good school teachers to supply the increase in demand seems fairly simple. Many soldiers called up in World War I were still making their way home after the ending of the war, and notice of their return was often noted in articles in the Herald. Here are a few of them. Honorably discharged. News has been received by the parents of Tenny Brown of Federal Point that he has arrived in the U.S. and has received his discharge. He is expected to arrive home tomorrow. He will be congratulated by many friends. Back from the Army. Joe Thornton, the electrician that formerly ran the electric shop in Hastings, was recently discharged from the Army, where he faithfully served his time here and abroad, returned home the latter part of the week. While over there, he experienced some frightful times and can tell very interesting stories about the Great War. His homecoming was a surprise to everyone, and he is receiving a warm welcome from his many friends. Returned from France. Toots Brown of Federal Point returned from service in the U.S. Army after a year's service with the AEF in France. He is very glad to get back home after such an expedition and says he liked France, but Florida suits him better. His many friends are glad to have him back and know that he did not receive an injury. And here's a fun story from this week's Herald in 1919. A Coca-Cola fiend. Harry Humphreys has the honor of possessing the only pony that has the habit of drinking Coca-Cola. We have heard of people that have to have their dope before they went to bed, but we have never heard of anything that sounded more fishy than this little pony story. Every night about 11:30, when Mr. Humphreys goes after him at the pasture, there is no getting along with him unless he gets his thirst quenched. He only knows of one cold drink stand in town, that being Stanley's, and goes up on the sidewalk and nickers for the cool drink. He has been tried on Orange Crush, lemon, and other drinks, but nothing doing. He shakes his head and spits it out, Coca-Cola or nothing. It also seems that he only likes the dope that is bottled at Palatka, as he doesn't take to some others that he has been tried on. He is of late beginning to take a ham sandwich along with it, which, from his actions, seems to say he wants the bread buttered. We suppose that the next thing he will be eating Irish stew and pork and beans served any style. As an interesting note, it seems the pony's Coke habit was getting to be a bit much for Mr. Humphreys, as later in this edition one want ad reads, "For sale, a very small, coal-black Shetland pony, very kind and gentle. Any child can handle him, broke to ride or drive. Applied to Harry Humphreys, Hastings." I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Hastings Headline History. This podcast was brought to you by Presenting the Past, bringing history back to the present through historic presentations and the sale of treasures from days gone by. This episode was written and produced by me, Michelle Murillo, with the aid of vintage copies of the Hastings Herald. Our theme music this week was the 1919 recording of Dardanella by Ben Selvin's Novelty Orchestra. And to wrap up this week in Hastings Headline History, how about a tune from the time? A 1919 hit, this week's song is "Oh, What a Pal Was Mary," recorded by Henry Burr.
Beautiful Amen.